Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Demographics Demogorgon. This is video number 2 in my series about ethnic diasporas. In the first video, we talked about South Asians. This time we're taking a look at East Asians, so that's Chinese, Korean, and Japanese immigrant communities. So here are the 10 cities with the largest East Asian diasporas. As usual, quick word about the methodology. I'm grouping East Asians together because historically and genetically, they have a lot more in common with each other compared with other Asian groups. Second thing is I'm pulling data at the metropolitan level and not the city proper. This is going to give us a more complete picture. Okay, let's jump to the list. Starting off with 239,000 East Asians, we have San Jose, California. This is the cradle of the tech industry. The metro area includes most of Silicon Valley, as you can see on this map. Places like Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Palo Alto, Cupertino. San Jose was actually the first big American city to elect an Asian person as mayor. This guy named Norman Mineta, if you're a politics nerd, you'll recognize his name. He went on to become a fairly prominent politician in DC and served in both the Clinton and Bush administrations. Like other Japanese people who were alive in the 40s, he and his family were incarcerated by the US government for multiple years during World War II. Staying on the topic of Japanese Americans, let's move on to number 9, the Big Pineapple, also known as urban Honolulu, with just over 250,000. Japanese is the dominant ancestry amongst East Asians here. In fact, Japanese people have been in Hawaii for almost 2 centuries. Their presence in the former island kingdom predates American statehood by quite a bit. For number 8, we're leaving the US and popping over to Australia's second largest city, Melbourne, with 428,000. So here's some background. Australia had a gold rush back in the early 1800s. Tens of thousands of people from China moved to the area in and around Melbourne during that time. Chinese immigration was so much that it spurred a major backlash and ultimately led to an official government response called the White Australia Policy. As that name implies, it banned non-white people from immigrating to Australia. It was finally abolished in the 70s, and Chinese immigration to Melbourne has since rebounded strongly. Numbers 7 and 6, we have a tie, Vancouver, Canada, and San Francisco, California, at each 600,000. These two cities have a lot in common. Chinese are overwhelmingly the biggest East Asian ethnicity in both. Like Melbourne, those early immigrants came looking for gold in the early 1800s. Additionally, both have seen Chinese people at the center of some pretty ugly political fights in recent years. In Vancouver, the fight has focused on rich people from mainland China buying real estate throughout the city. Vancouver is considered one of the most egregious examples of the housing affordability crisis going on worldwide. Things have now escalated to the point that Canadian politicians have introduced bans against home buyers from foreign countries, obviously including China. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, it's a different kind of drama that's playing out. In 2022, the district attorney, a guy named Chesabuddin, was famously dunked out of office in a recall election that was partially led by Chinese communities who felt he was soft on crime, especially anti-Asian violence. The city's political battles have since spilled over into other hot topics like affirmative action and advanced placement classes in public schools. Okay, so we're halfway through the list. Let's talk about an honorable mention that didn't quite make the cut. Here are a couple of clues. The city's name starts with an L. It's the capital of that country, and its metro population's over 10 million. If you guessed London, you actually guessed wrong. The answer is Lima, Peru. There are at least 1 million people of Chinese and Japanese ancestry scattered across Peru. Their impact on that country has been pretty noteworthy. The most well-known dish from Peru is this delicious invention called lomo saltado. It was originally created by Chinese immigrants to Peru, and the most famous family from Peru are these folks here. You're looking at Alberto Fujimori, who was president back in the 90s, alongside his daughter, Keiko Fujimori, who is a politician in Peru. So why is Lima not on this list? Well, there's 2 problems. One, the Peruvian government does not officially track this type of data by city. And two is cultural. Even though someone might have an Asian ancestor, that might not be their preferred way of ethnic identification, at least when it comes to telling the government in an official census. Anyways, let's get back to the list. In spots number 5 and 4, we have Australia and Canada's largest cities, Sydney and Toronto, in that order. If you've watched my video on the South Asian diasporas, this shouldn't be much of a surprise. Those two cities have so much international diversity that they'll make it on pretty much any list like this. Number 3 is the juggernaut of Latin America, Sao Paulo, Brazil, with around 900,000 East Asians, of which most are Japanese. So here's the background. In the early 1900s, Brazil was in a bit of a pickle. The country had an abundance of coffee plantations, but there was a labor shortage. Slavery was abolished, and European immigrants didn't want to do this type of work. Enter Japanese people. Times were pretty rough in Japan, and Western countries like Australia and America had laws explicitly banning Asian people from immigrating. Fast forward to present day, Brazil is now home to the largest Japanese population outside of Japan. Vast majority of them live in Sao Paulo. One of the biggest cultural imports from Japan is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is a very popular martial art brought over by early immigrants. The last two is a tie between New York and LA, both at roughly 1 million East Asians each. New York has the biggest Chinese population outside of Asia. Manhattan's Chinatown is iconic and has been around for a very long time. It's been used in lots of films and television, but so too is Flushing. That's across the river in Queens. It has an even larger Chinese population than Manhattan does. Meanwhile, in LA, it's a slightly different setup. Most notably, it's more evenly balanced between the different East Asian ethnicities. LA County has 3 historically Japanese neighborhoods. 2 of them are in the city and 1 is in a suburb called Torrance. There is a Chinatown in LA, but it's a shell of its former self. Most Chinese people moved out to the suburbs in San Gabriel Valley or down to Irvine, which is in Orange County, but is still part of the LA region technically. Last but certainly not least are Koreans. LA is home to the largest Korean diaspora outside of East Asia. Most are in suburban areas with one exception, and that is Koreatown, located smack dab in the middle of the city. It rose to infamy back in the early 90s. This was during the chaos of the LA riots. $1 billion worth of destruction, 63 people killed. This neighborhood was specifically targeted because of underlying tension between Black and Korean people in LA. The riots got so bad that many Korean shop owners armed themselves in hopes of scaring off mobs. Fast forward to present day, much of that tension has now dissipated. There's a saying that time heals all wounds. I would say it's time plus reconciliation that heals wounds, and that's what LA has had 30 years of between Black and Korean communities. Okay, folks, that's the list. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.